Alright guys, it is time to explain Morph, and I happen to think that Morph is probably the most intricate, most carefully crafted, most, just like every word means something. The symbolism is incredibly intricate. There's a lot to the song. I would say that out of all the songs on Trench, Morph might be the one that I feel like shows the highest level of craftsmanship in the creation of the lyrics. Let me explain what I mean. Hey everybody, I'm Clifford Stumby, the pop song professor. Welcome to my channel where we make English class awesome by explaining and sometimes roasting song lyrics on school days. Today we are talking about Morph by 21 Pilots from the album Trench. You guys have probably noticed that I posted a lot of other videos explaining songs from this album. You should definitely go check those out. And you should also check out my Patreon in the description down below. It's a great place of community. There's lots of people who love 21 Pilots, lots of people who love songwriting, and a lot of helpful tips and song explanations and suggestions and all sorts of good stuff to help you guys become better music listeners and better songwriters. So check that out, but for now, let's talk about Morph, and to do that, let's jump into the first verse. Can't stop thinking about if and when I die. For now I see that if and when are truly different cries. For if is purely panic, and when is solemn sorrow, and one invades today while the other spies tomorrow. This is a really interesting comparison and contrast here. Something that Tyler Joseph is doing very well in this situation. He says, can't stop thinking about if and when I die. So he's talking about if, and he's talking about when in relation to death. So the two statements here are, what if I die someday? And then the other one is, when will I die? Those are the two questions. So within those, he says, now I see that if and when are truly different cries. For if is purely panic. What if I die? And it's easy to panic about that. And it's funny because we all know we're gonna die, but if you say, if I die, it makes sense to say something like that, but it feels somehow, like he says, it's panic, it's fear. He says, and when is solemn sorrow? So yeah, I am gonna die, it's just gonna happen, I know it. And the fourth line, and one invades today while the other spies tomorrow. So one of them is like, yep, I see myself dying one day in the future. That's the second, the when. And then the if is like, what if I die? And it kind of ruins your day thinking about something like that. So then he jumps into the next half of this stanza. And this one is a lot more intricate, lots of very difficult to explain things here, but April helped me out a lot, explained a lot of this, Roman, and a lot of other people who have been emailing me and tweeting at me, whose names I couldn't list all of them because there's too many of them. And so it's been very helpful to hear from you guys. But here's what we've got. We're surrounded and we're hounded. Because we've just been talking about thoughts of death, it could mean a lot of different things. It could mean depression, it could mean suicidal thoughts, it could mean fear, panic, anger, betrayal, any sort of negative feeling or emotion. You can take it a lot of different ways depending on how Tyler intended it. But he says, we're surrounded and we're hounded. There's no above or under or around it. We can't get away from this kind of stuff. Now he says, for above is blind belief, and that seems to be a reference to maybe believing in a higher power to come and save you. And under is sword to sleeve, and if you put a sword into a sheath, it's kind of like you're giving up the fight and you're stopping. So that could be a reference to suicide or just giving into the temptations. And then he says, and around is scientific miracle, which could be like, all right, I don't want to die, so I'm just gonna wait till they can freeze me like Walt Disney, and then they can resurrect me in a few years, and I never have to die, and I can just keep on living forever. But he continues, let's pick above and see. For if and when we go above, the question still remains, are we still in love, and is it possible we feel the same? He says, yeah, let's pick above. Let's have this blind belief in a higher power to save us. And see, for if and when we go above, both if we die and when we die. So when we're considering these questions of if and when, how are we gonna feel? Because he says the question still remains, are we still in love, and is it possible we feel the same? And I've seen a couple of different interpretations of this line. My favorite was the idea that if you are believing in a higher power, like a loving God, are you actually wanting him to save you because you love him, and because you want to be with him, or are you just doing it out of fear because you are afraid of the opposite of death? Other than that, I don't know exactly what that line means, and I don't remember who gave me that suggestion, but you know who you are. Comment down below and thank you. But so he continues, so actually before we continue, quick review. That's the three different ways of dealing with the problem of death: going above, going under, going around. And the going under is kind of like accepting it, the going around is trying to get past it, and the going above is asking for help from a higher supernatural power like God. And he says, and that's when going under starts to take my wonder. But until that time, I'll try to sing this. And when I first heard that line, I thought he was saying it takes his sense of wonder. But now I think it means more something like, he starts wondering about it. It takes his wonder, his propensity to wonder about things, it takes it and makes it about that. Like, what would going under look like? What would that mean? What would giving up or surrendering to these things that we're surrounded by and hounded by, what would that look like? So, but until that time, I'll try to sing this, and that thing that he's singing is the chorus. If I keep moving, they won't know. I'll morph to someone else. What they throw at me is too slow. I'll morph to someone else. I'm just a ghost. I'll morph to someone else. Defense mechanism mode. And I felt like a lot of people were really confused by this, or a lot of people had theories going in a lot of different directions. And so to kind of like give the kind of the weak average of all of those different ideas, I would say that he's saying like, I'm going to adapt. I'm going to adjust to my surroundings. Maybe I'll try to be somebody slightly better in some situations, or I'll just try to go with what's easy in other situations. If I keep moving, they won't know. I'm gonna keep fighting. I'm gonna keep, you know, there's this question of death, and if it's this giant thing that we have to go above, around, or under, he's probably, it sounds like he's not really committing one way or the other maybe, or he's just waiting until it's his time to have to make that decision, and he's just trying to keep moving before that decision hits him too hard, or maybe the bishops are coming after him or something like that, and it could be a reference to the Banditos. And so when he says what they throw at me is too slow, I'll morph to someone else, he can change his skin and become something else before they make him have to answer that question, so he keeps avoiding the question maybe. He's a ghost, the defense mechanism mode is avoidant, it's difficult to catch him, stuff like that. And that word morph, I think, kind of says it all. But then we jump into verse 2, and this is where it gets really interesting. The rap here is probably my favorite stanza from the whole album, just for the sound's sake, not necessarily for the words. The words probably something from Neon Gravestones, or the meaning, but as far as this goes, he says, he'll always try to stop me, that Nicolas Bourbaki. He's got no friends close, but those who know him most know he goes by Nico. He told me I'm a copy, and when I'd hear him mock me, that's almost stopped me. Now, Nicolas Bourbaki seems to be the name of like a collective of mathematicians and scientists from the 1930s. Their group invented the like zero through the line through the circle thing that 21 Pilots uses to stylize their name and everything. And so maybe there's a little bit of a history with thinking about these guys and what they talk about. I've seen other people point out how the group tried to like prove God and the devil's existence mathematically, which has some obvious, you know, philosophical implications and things like that. But Nicolas Bourbaki goes by Nico. He's got no friends close, but those who know him most, he goes by Nico. And so he's blurry face. He's Tyler's bishop, the one that oversees his sector of the city, and we don't really know how Nico's different from the other bishops yet, but that's the one that Tyler has to deal with, and it's the one who's chasing him in the Trench music videos. He told me I'm a copy, and that could mean a lot of things. It could mean that he's insecure that his music isn't original, which we know is crap, because there's nothing like 21 Pilots as far as genre goes, but it could also mean that he's a copy of Nico. It could mean that he is a younger version, and then Nico's trying to say like, yeah, you're never gonna be better than me. You're trying to be good, you're trying to be a good person, you're trying to stay away from bad thoughts, but you're just a copy of me. You're the copy of the worst side of you. And I think it was actually April who helped me come up with that interpretation there, and so I appreciate that and her help. He says, when I'd hear him mock me, that almost stopped me. And that could be about writing music, it could be about fighting, and just living life. For Tyler, I think all three of those things kind of go together, so I feel like it kind of encompasses those. He says, well, we're surrounded and we're hounded. There's no above or a secret door. What are we here for? The line about there's no above is weird, because I don't think he's saying that there's no God, because inside the album cover, they thank God, like literally and specifically, and they do that, I think, in almost all of their album covers, if not all. And so that line is the line that really trips me up. I'm confused there. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that. But I think basically he's saying like right now there's no above, or there's no quick fix to this, or it feels like there's no above, kind of a trees moment. Where are you in the trees? What are we here for if not to run straight through all our tormentors? But until that time, I'll try to sing this. And so I think he feels like he's destined to or doomed to just try to like beat it through Nico and then try to go through all the people who doubt him, or the feelings that doubt him, and the things and the ideas that doubt him, and he's having to just deal with that as a human, and in a way that seems like that's life. So that big blockade that he was having to deal with, he feels like he just has to run through. Now, I agreed with just about everybody else when we started talking about the bridge, because there seems to be no rhyme or reason or method or purpose or meaning on God's green earth for what the bridge means, but we're gonna give it a little bit of a shot. I'll morph to someone else. Lights, they blink to me, transmitting things to me, ones and zeros, ergo the symphony. The symphony seems to be a reference to the song and to the album as a whole. The ones and zeros, it could be him gathering information and learning things. Ones and zeros refers to digital technology, and so he could be talking about mixing and mastering the songs for this album and creating them. He says, anybody listening, which could be another reference to the fact that this is a song. Ones and zeros count to infinity. It takes a long time and sometimes it feels pointless, maybe. I'm surrounded and I'm hounded. And he goes back into a lot of the other parts of what we've just heard in other songs, or other stanzas in this song. And finally, there's the outro where he says, not done, not done. Not done, Josh done, which was a pretty cool moment. I'll morph to someone else. And so morphing is not necessarily a bad thing, perhaps. He's saying like, I'm not done, I'm not giving up, I'm not going under. It seems like not done and morphing seems to be just like he said, a defense mechanism mode, a way to keep on fighting this fight. Guys, I'd love to hear what you have to say about Morph. Like I said, probably the most intricate and well put together and just like beautiful song, particularly in those verses, but also perhaps one of the most confusing. In fact, it's my most confusing song from the entire album. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And in the meantime, while you wait for more videos from me and while you're thinking about it, you can check out these videos right here. Check out my Patreon in the description down below. I promise you, 100% worth it. You'll love the community we have there and a lot of the extra niche songs that I explain for you guys and the songs and what you request. But in any case, thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you next time.